we're going to take a look at some of the core structures that exist out there in the world of GU/HSD Schoology, and we're going to extrapolate some characteristics that can lead to a better productive environment for students. So on the materials page, we see that here's a sample of a math class, and some of the characteristics that we do see here is the first thing we see is we see weekly folders listed here. This is a common thread throughout most GU/HSD teachers using Schoology here. We do see that it is specified with the weekly dates here in general. Sometimes students don't know when week 1 is. Most of the time they don't. A lot of times, especially in your week 9, what week is that? It's nice to have a visual tell here as well by having the dates here. We do see that in addition, there are nested folders inside. So beyond specifically week 1, we see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we see that not only here, but we see it consistently for the next folder. So consistency in sequencing and structure is very important, so students can predict what's going to happen and be familiar when they come across something that is either is familiar to them, or that at least they have some background knowledge on why it might look the way it does. Number 4 is we see consistent naming conventions. So we see week 1 : space 8-10-ACE-14. We see the exact same spacing and punctuation here. So the naming conventions are identical. This creates another level of consistency for students as they become comfortable sifting through content. Number 5 is we see here that there are minimal distractions. We notice the short length of the text for each description that's here. This might be nice, a quick way for students to be able to tell exactly maybe what is in there. We'll see some other methods later. But we see that there's not a lot of distractions, and part of that is because of that consistent nature of what's being listed here. We also see consistency in the terms of the lesson sequence that is occurring on each day. We see notes, we see AB Calc notes, this is an Edpuzzle, and then we see a worksheet that's completed. So this would be the typical flow. Some consider this to be like an engage, explore, apply. In mathematics, this is how it would look. But this structure here is evident when you open and expand each one of these here. We do see a separate structure here, but this is for quiz. We notice that the quizzes seemingly would be on one day that we see here. But this note section is consistent. Now let's take a look at one more option here. We're going to look at the calendar scope and sequence. So it's nice that when students come here to your materials page, you may only have week 1 published and week 2 may not be there yet. So how can we give students an idea about the arc or the scope of the work that's going to be done in the quarter or semester without having to publish that for them? And this teacher's done that in the terms of the AB Calculus calendar. And they provided a link in each week that says, hey, this is what we're doing this week, but this is the long-term goal that we're going for. And so this is what it looks like in this student. So if the students come here, they open the calendar, they see that the calendar is actually a spreadsheet the teacher has created with links to the Zooms, but also another way to look at the big picture of what's happening as we move forward in this quarter. We see that months are separated by sheets at the bottom here. So again, we see the scope that's listed here, and then we see the consistent sequence that supports that here. We're going to now go take a look at another example. We see that numbers 1 through 6 are evident over here, and we also have an addition of numbers 7 and 8. There's resources, folders, and links at the very top here. Your students are going to need lots of resources and ideas on how maybe to perform certain tasks that you mentioned in your weekly activities. It's a good spot at the very top. We notice that here's the materials and options. So these items are at the very top of this teacher's Schoology page. And we see that these are resources for anything the teacher thinks that might support the student in some of the subsequent activities that are listed here. We also see that in week 1 here, this teacher chose number 8, weekly directions page. So this might be an alternative to the calendar scope and sequence. These directions serve as a weekly scope and sequence. If these directions are listed here, we assume that these directions will give us ideas about how to perform these tasks here. And in fact, that's what it does. These are the directions that show up that are listed here. They are enumerated and bulleted as they go down. Doing it this way will involve a couple more clicks from your student. They'll have to click into this, open up this page, read number 1, then maybe go back and then open up the activity. If this works for your students and you don't see a loss of productivity, then this may be something that works for you. When we continue to the next course structure here, we see that this materials page is from a social studies class. And they are bi-weekly folders with a unit folder in the top level. So this is something a little different. We see the current unit here, we see unit 2, and we see unit 3 listed here. We also see in the description of the title itself of the folder which weeks are contained within this unit. So we say bi-weekly because it looks like unit 2 has 2 weeks within it, and we see a folder for week 1 or week 2, and then we see a folder for week 3 listed here, and then here are the items listed underneath to do. They are nested folders as well. We see there's consistent sequencing and structure as well here with the folder naming conventions as well. There are minimal distractions. And we see also that there are assignment and folder labeling. So the addition here that we see is Unit 2, Congress, Article 1, Weeks 2 and 3. So there's more information in the title that has been in the prior ones. Again, topic, Part 1, week number, lesson, date. And we see that that's consistent throughout. So it's a good idea to choose a naming convention and a sequence that works for you and make it consistent with your students. Additionally, because students may not be entirely familiar with the icon representation in Schoology, we see that this teacher is labeling assignment at the end when it actually is an assignment. Here's an assignment, assignments in the title, assignments in the title. So again, more visual cues for the students to guide them through their learning. And we're going to take a look at one more course structure here that we see, and then we see another version of consistent naming conventions here. We have weeks and we have dates and we have weeks at the top level, but then each week we have a folder for each lesson. This is an English class, so we see that the students are working on grammar, review, reflect, revise, reading practice, and speaking and listening. And we see that these folders are consistent throughout each week, which signifies to the students these are the top level kind of topics or themes that we're going to be working with during this week. When the student opens up grammar, they see that there's a specific assignment for that. If there are several assignments within a lesson topic, as we see with lesson 2, then it's abbreviated with 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, so that there still is a sequence that's created by adding the point number at the end of the first number here. We're also going to take a look at the, again, lesson enumeration, we'll call it, in here, 2.1, 2.4, 2.3.